Hello everyone, welcome back to TC Search 1.0 for biology course. For the next 2 weeks, we will be learning about homeostasis, and this will be our first part. Alright, and let's get started. So, before we move on to our lesson today, I just wanted to have a little recap from last week, and we learned about the 11 human body system. We discuss each major organs that supports our body systems in our daily activities. And now we will incorporate our knowledge about the body systems to homeostasis. And remember, homeostasis is all about keeping the internal environment in a steady state. Alright, so before we do our aim and do now, I just wanted to ask you, why is homeostasis important to us? I want you to pause the video and think about your answer before we go over this slide. Alright? So now that you have your answer, we can tell that the importance of homeostasis is to help the animals, or in general, organisms, to maintain the stable internal environment with the best conditions for it to operate. It's a dynamic process that requires a constant monitoring of all systems in the body to detect changes and mechanisms that react to those changes. And I also give you a worksheet about homeostasis on Google Classroom. Please check that out. Alright, so our aim for today is how homeostasis maintained. So pause the video and try to answer the do now. Okay, so I hope you've tried that easy question about giving an example of how we maintain homeostasis. So, alright, I'll give you an example, like a few examples, I guess, and I explain it to you. So body temperature is the first one, alright? And I just wanted to explain this further. So body temperature control in humans is the most familiar examples of homeostasis. In normal body temperature, it hovers around 37 degrees Celsius, but a number of factors can affect this value, including exposure to the elements like hormones, metabolic rate, and disease. And this will lead to excessively high or low body temperatures. Alright, and the hypothalamus in the brain regulates body temperature, and feedback about body temperature from the body is carried through the bloodstream to the brain, which results in adjustments in breathing rate, blood sugar levels, and metabolic rate. In contrast, reduced activity, perspiration, and heat exchange processes that permit more blood to circulate near the skin surface contribute to heat loss. And heat loss is reduced by insulation, decreased circulation to the skin, clothing, shelter, and external heat sources. So another example is the concentration of various ions in your blood must be kept steady along with pH and concentration of glucose. If these values get too high or low, you can end up getting very sick, which is a bad thing, of course. And another one is that biology systems, like those of your body, are constantly being pushed away from the balance points. And for instance, when you exercise, your muscles increase heat production, nudging your body temperature upward. Similarly, when you drink a glass of fruit juice, your blood glucose goes up. So I'll give you another example if you're kind of confused about that. So when an individual doesn't have enough to eat, the body adjusts by slowing down metabolism so that he or she expends fewer calories. The adaptation conserves the limited energy available from the inadequate diet. So therefore, homeostasis depends on the ability of your body to detect and oppose these changes. So when we are talking about homeostasis, we use keywords and key points to remember its concept. The first bullet point is that homeostatic control mechanisms have at least three independent components: a receptor, a control center, and effector. The receptor senses environmental stimuli, sending the information to the control center. The control center, generally a region of the brain called the hypothalamus, signals an effector, such as muscles or organ, in order to respond to the stimuli. Another bullet point is the feedback method of the positive feedback, which it enhances or accelerates output created by an active stimulus. Uh, the example for this one is the platelet aggregation and accumulation in response to an injury is an example of positive feedback. Another bullet point is the negative feedback, which brings a system back to its level of normal functioning. Adjustments of blood pressure, metabolism, and body temperature are all negative feedback examples. And for our key terms, the most important one is the word homeostasis. It is the ability of a system or living organism to adjust its internal environment to maintain a stable equilibrium, such as the ability of warm-blooded animals to maintain constant temperature. Alright, so in this slide, I included that homeostasis is controlled by negative feedback mechanism, and I will tell you why it's controlled by negative feedback mechanism. Now let's move on to the homeostatic control system. All of the homeostatic control mechanism have at least three independent components for the variable being regulated. But before that, I just wanted to, make sure that you get the idea of homeostasis. And again, it can be influenced by either external and internal conditions, and it is maintained by many different mechanisms. So I'll read the second bullet for you, which is a feedback mechanism or system is a cycle of events in which the status of body condition is continually monitored, evaluated, changed, and so on. And any disruption that changes a controlled condition is called a stimulus. And to better understand what a stimulus is, it is a change in the environment such as an irritant, loss of blood, or like a presence of a foreign chemical. So last time we talked about the sensory system, and it is a way we react to a change in the environment. It's like the same idea but different definition. So basically, stimulus is the change being occurred, while sensory system is the way we react to a change in the environment. Alright, so here are the three basic components that regulates our body in a stable condition. The first one is receptor. So it monitors changes and sends messages. Alright, so basically it detects changes in the internal or external environment. An example for this one is peripheral chemoreceptors, which detect changes in the pH level. The next one is control center. It receives from receptors and generates commands when they are needed. Um, so basically, the control center receives information from the sensors and initiates the responses to maintain homeostasis. The most important example is the hypothalamus, a region of the brain that controls everything from the body temperature to heart rate, blood pressure, fullness, and the sleep and wake cycles. And later on, I will tell you the role of the hypothalamus, which is important to this course. Lastly, we will be talking about the effector, which it is any organ or tissue that receives information from the control center and acts to bring about the changes needed to maintain homeostasis. One example is the kidney, which retains water if blood pressure is too low. So all of these, like sensors or receptors, control center, and effector, are the basic components of every homeostatic response. And later on, we will be talking about positive and negative feedback, which is more complicated, which is like, more complex idea. Alright, so take a look up here, take a look at figure 1.4, and this is a simple illustration in order to understand the three variables in homeostasis. I want you to pause the video if you wanted to take notes or take a screenshot. So this is another, I would say, graphic organizer to better understand the negative feedback loop, and it includes the sensor, control, and effector, and it also gives you the example. All right. So now let's focus on the two types of feedback systems, which is the negative feedback and the positive feedback. So over here, I gave you a simple definition of negative feedback and positive feedback. But to better understand what are the definitions of both of them, I will tell you. Alright, so negative feedback mechanisms reduce output or activity to return an organ or an organ or system to its normal range. So when it increases, it will go down to equilibrium state. And I will show you a graph in the next slide. Alright, so the regulation of blood pressure is an example of negative feedback. Blood vessels have sensors called baroreceptors that detect if blood pressure is too high or too low and send a signal to the hypothalamus, and the hypothalamus then sends a message to the heart, blood vessels, and kidneys, which act as effectors in blood pressure regulation. If blood pressure is too high, the heart rate decreases as the blood vessels increase in diameter, while the kidneys retain less water. These changes would cause the blood pressure to return to its normal range, and the process reverses when blood pressure decreases, causing blood vessels to constrict and the kidney to increase water retention. And that's for negative feedback. It reduces the intensity of the original stimulus, and it is the opposite in direction to the initial change. And for positive feedback, it is the mechanism in which an output is enhanced in order to maintain homeostasis, and it is designed to accelerate or enhance the output created by a stimulus that has already been activated. And positive feedback mechanisms are designed to push up levels out of normal ranges. To achieve this, a series of events initiates a cascading process that builds to increase the effect of the stimulus. This process can be beneficial, but it is rarely used because it may become uncontrollable. A positive feedback example is blood platelet accumulation and aggregation, which in turn causes blood clotting blood clotting in response to an injury of the blood vessels. Alright, so this is the anatomy of brain, and we have the hypothalamus, which is the important keyword that I was mentioning earlier. And the role of hypothalamus is involved in different daily activities, like when you eat or when you drink, and it involves in the control of the body's temperature and energy maintenance. And it also involves in the process of memorizing and in stress control. Lastly, I want to show you the difference between the negative feedback and positive feedback loops. And it is are written on graph. Alright, so positive feedback is when if when a variable in your body, like insulin, glucose, uh, your body temperature increases, it will keep going up. It will never go down to its normal range. Unlike the negative feedback, when it goes up, it will go back to its equilibrium state, meaning it's being um, it's normally function. All right, and I just wanted to remind you guys that I gave you the worksheet for homeostasis, and that would help you to better understand our lesson today. And that concludes our lesson for today. I hope you've learned a lot. See you next week and have a great day.